I would like present when I read about some ego documents. I just was deeply in some kind of research of my family, in my family. So this is what I can show you. The problems with the ultra-Orthodox education in Israel during the last 2 decades led me to research the education of the Jewry in the Russian Empire in the 19th and 20th century. In the late 19th century, the secular and traditionally oriented Jews in the Russian Empire focused on promoting education for the impoverished Jewish population on the pale of the settlement. And if we are looking here in this map, we can see here the pale of settlement, which is in Hebrew Tchuma Moshav. I'm from Ukraine. I was born in Ukraine. This is why I'm interested in. Based on Judaism, the Haskalah movement seeks to combine secular education with Jewish tradition for both sexes. However, this vision met setbacks and negative attitudes among Orthodox Jews at that time. The reforms of Alexander II, this is 60s to 80s years of the 19th century, increased Jewish student enrollments and social integration, but also fueled anti-Semitism. A secular education was increasingly important for Jews in the emerging capitalist society, which is globalistic in nature. A private initiative established a Jewry primary school. The Russian Empire had 2 types of folk elementary schools, with a 2-year curriculum and special professional schools that required an additional 2 years of study. The Jewish schools relied completely on philanthropy, including the Society for the Promotion of Culture among the Jews of Russia, formed in October 1863. In Jewish education, the Russian Empire's Ministry of Education tried to transform Talmud Torah and header programs to improve quality of education. A special commission was formed to provide information and resources to Jewish elementary school organizers. And now I'm going to my family history. As an example for such kind of school, I choose a school for Jewish girls in a small town of Rzhishev. This is near Kiev. Here it's in Russian. This is Kiev province, and here even there is no name. This is Kiev, and here is Rzhishev. This is all pale of settlement. I choose the specialist schools for girls in the town of Rzhishev, modern Ukraine, not like just a random town. My grandmother's family on my mother's side lived for several centuries in the town of Rzhishev until 1980. After that, my grandmother's family was sent for proletarian re-education in the Ural region in Kazakhstan, since they were, by definition, bourgeois. I think my grandmother's relatives from my mother's side studied at Rzhishev Community Women's School. However, she and her sister got private Jewish education before the revolution, and then they graduated from Soviet school in Kazakhstan. And here you can see some views of Rzhishev before the revolution. According to archival documents, a Jewish school for girls operated in Rzhishev on private donations from 1901 until 1905, and all the documents I find in archives that are now open, completely open, thanks to the people who are working on this on Ukraine, and there are a lot of information there. However, all the documents are in Russian or Ukrainian. This is what we can do.
Which archive?
Archives of Jewish communities, all the files of Jewish communities from what has survived. It is there online. I just take it for free. You can take this. According to archival documents, the Jewish school for girls operated in Ruzhishev on private donation from 1901 until 1905. Ruzhishev school's trustees sent their first petition to the Kiev branch of the Society for Propagation of Education Among Jews of Russia on December 14, 1905. A letterhead was attached. This is a letterhead, and attached to it for Monsieur Cibulski's Ruzhishev Iron Foundry and Machine Building Plan. The school trustees from the Ruzhishev Jewish Ladies Circle signed it. Madame Cibulskaya, the wife of the iron foundry owner, headed the school's board of trustees. The letter said that Esther Grigorievna Farbstein established a free school for Jewish girls in Ruzhishev at a sugar factory on her own initiative. The school had 60 to 80 students in its first year, and the teaching staff was only half full. A letter mentioned that philanthropic lottery and box collections are donations, but they are inadequate to meet the school's needs. It was written in December 1905, when 125 Jewish girls were already studying in the folk school for Ruzhishev Jewish girls, who, according to the letter, came from the poorest families in the town. Once enrollment doubled in 4 years, financial aid was requested from the Kiev branch of the society. Attached to the letter was a circular which was mandatory for the petition. Questions were posed in Russian and Yiddish. The answers are handwritten in Russian. From the answers, it appears that the school rented 5 rooms with a yard and paid 100 rubles a year in rent, 40% of income. Just you can understand what is 180 rubles. A 2-story house for family, about 6 rooms, with a small market near it. This was us before revolution, and it was sold for 800 rubles. So this is just you can understand. Desks were provided for girls in ages 10 to 13 during the school year. For classes, the girls were divided into 4 groups. School days were 5 hours long. Classes were 3 hours long before lunch, with 30-minute and 20-minute breaks. The afternoon study lasted 2 hours without break. The school was open all year round during its first 5 years, except on public holidays. Budgetary constraints prevented the school from organizing festive celebration. Schooling lasted 4 years, but education was considered 2 classes. Most students attended school for free, but 1/3 came from wealthy families who paid for their education. It must be noted that the school had a private educational system from 1901 to 1905. The curriculum was approved only by the school's board of trustees and covered the following subjects: Yiddish, Russian, math, and geography. The school educated Jewish girls and not boys, so Jewish subjects were not taught. The school had a small library with Russian and Yiddish books. 4 teachers worked there in the first 5 years, 3 females and 1 male. Teachers were not housed on school grounds. Owing to their small monthly earnings, All teachers had to earn extra money to supplement their salaries. And now we can discuss the budget of such a school. The budget was income 452 rubles, which 21% coming from box fees, 22% from philanthropic lottery, 30% from ticket sales for philanthropic performances, and 27% from tuition fees for the same period. As you understand, total local philanthropic donations, 73%. As regarding to expenses, you can see here that direct teaching expenses, they are 61%, and 39% are others. Rent, heating, servant wages, small for even vaccinations, and so on. According to the documents, 2 months after the appeal of the trustees of Rzeszów Jewish Ladies Circle in March 1906, the society in Kiev and Petersburg gave the folk school for Jewish girls a cash allowance. Madame Cybulskaya wrote a letter of gratitude to the society, noting that the school board of trustees hope the society will continue to support the school. In mid-June 1907, the Society for the Propagation of Education Among Jews sent Inspector Fialkovsky from St. Petersburg to inspect the school. At the time of the inspector's arrival, 8,500 Jews lived in Rzeszów, according to his detailed report. Fialkovsky stated in his report that previously Rzeszów had a prosperous Jewish population, but in recent years the economic situation of the population has drastically deteriorated, and now more than half of the local Jewish population represents an impoverished element. The report also noted that the proximity to factories had a positive impact on Rzeszów, and it attracted a larger educated population compared to other settlements, and their influence on local life was much more noticeable. The influence of the local intelligentsia, as noted by Fialkovsky in his report, was the reason for the establishment of fairly large public school for girls, which in his opinion deserved special attention, as female education in our province does not receive any public attention. Not all district towns in the Kiev Governorate have publicly accessible women's school. However, the inspector emphasized in his report that the meager income of the school did not allow for hiring highly qualified teachers. Moreover, due to the small donations from the collections box fund, the school was forced to use the money donated for the construction of its own building. Fialkovsky proposed to the society to transform the public girls' school in Rzeszów into their flagship project. To achieve this, he suggests increasing the school budget almost fivefold to 2,165 rubles, on which most of the money should be spent to the salaries of the teaching staff, consisting of educated Jewish teachers. The budget would be comprised of tuition fees, philanthropic donations or local, and matching funds from the society. As you can see here, only 56% of the local donation instead of the 70% that was there. And the direct teaching expenses, 80%, which we have seen previously, it was only 61%. So the quality should be better in such situation. If we are talking about the intensity of school, the changes that of intensity of school for Jewish girls in Rzeszów in 1907, 1909, We can find there highly qualified and well-paid teaching staff. School curriculum included the subject taught in Hebrew language, Bible studies and Jewish history. Subject taught in Russian, language, math, history and geography, special home craft lessons, intensive use of visual aids in teaching, and rich library in Russian, Yiddish and Hebrew. And the fact that the curriculum included the subject taught in Hebrew was strange for local people. They did not know why they need Hebrew. This was completely the decision of the society send money, matching money, and mostly the local people wanted to know Russian because this was the language of integration. However, they received money and they changed the curriculum. During this time, we can find here very interesting documents showing the beginning of trade union of teachers in Israel, our Israel, because they demand the more wages. There was also conflict with the society and between the Board of Trustees. There was conflict regarding the breaks on Passover and Sukkot, whether it should be 1 month or 2 weeks. How long should be breaks in summer? 2 months or 1 month. So it was a time of after the first revolution in Russia with a strong effect of trade unions in Russia, and we can see it here with the teachers, and also it is very interesting the efforts of Board of Trustees to be with teachers, but in any case to be with students too. It's a very, very difficult situation how to bring the peace in the school, and it was completely inspected by the society, sent money, and there were always criticizing the process of very, very slow changes. They demand more and more changes and more effective management of the school. It's very interesting because it's the same that we have now here in Israel, the same thing, how to change our school education. But the situation with the money was very difficult. And the Board of Trustees, they understood that they need more money, and for this they need to go to state primary school. Not to be dependent only on the society, but to receive money from the state. For this situation, they need school for boys, and they gave a petition to the local government. They want to receive such kind of license. However, it was very difficult because there was a demand from the local government for a huge amount of box taxes. What does it mean? It does mean that all box taxes collected by Jewish community, about 40% should go to school. And the local community could not do this because it was very difficult economically, and this was a crisis at that time. Most people at this place were very poor for the time, and we also can find the profession of fathers who send their girls to the school. They are all poor people. This is poor So the Board of Trustees asked from the society to help them with the local government, and it was done via St. Petersburg. So this. What can we say? That everything came to the decision in 1910, when finally a public school has been granted to us, as can we read in the documents. It is very interesting why I bring this sample. It's only sample, but this case study, this is the same what we can find in any places in Pale of settlement. These were the first schools which bring this kind of education. It was primary education, but they study a lot, and then they came after revolution even to institutes and to higher education, and some of them came to Israel. So these schools, they are basic for secular education that we can find with some kind of tradition studies. These were not any religious schools. These were completely secular schools, like we can say. And thus, I would like to finish my lecture with the words of Madame Tsibulskaya to the Kiev branch of the society. Who among you is familiar with a child of a poor man in the province at the beginning of his school admission? This child is so beaten and wild, he does not understand this when spoken to in simple jargon, Yiddish. He is devoid of the ability to think, and in order to arouse understanding in this wild, beaten child, it is not about the duration of time, but the quality of the sessions. We must continue spreading education's light into the deepest bare corners. Time will take care of the rest. And we know that it was completely lucky and successful experience. Thank you very much.
Actually, several comments. First, we have like the figures and the numbers about the number of schools in the Russian Empire in that period, so we know exactly how many schools there were, what they studied, what they taught, what the composition of the students, how many of them were Orthodox, non-Orthodox, etc. Second, from this particular study case, we can see how important it was for the parents to maintain their children having a good education despite the financial difficulties, and it was true not just for the boys but also for the girls.
Yeah.
Yes? And the third point is that I did a third studies on Orthodox families and secular studies. And many of the daughters of Orthodox families were sent to general schools and state schools. So the fact that it was like a secular school doesn't mean that it didn't have like Orthodox girls in it. I mean,
this is what was my grandmother. She was, my great-grandfather was Orthodox. This is not the situation of the religion. This is a situation of approach and openness to the world and integration. And this was the point that Orthodox parents, they understood that they need this integration, and this was the way via their daughters. I have no time, but I have also the data about Talmud Torah. They opened, this is the second school which was opened, was Talmud Torah. Of course, it was more subjects of Judaism. There were a lot of subjects on the Russian. I know this from my family, and I know how it was. It was the way to integrate in society. It was a very short time because after revolution it was completely another situation. But at that period, opening of the women's school or Talmud Torah with semi-secular subjects as a program, it was a way to integrate to the society.
Well, I'm not sure if the main
No,
reason
I look through the documents in my father from Talna, so I know about Talmud Torah there. It's another story, but in any case, this is, I think that the situation, they understood the situation of this capitalist society. They need integrate for their business. Only some of them were they didn't work. Everybody there, they were involved in business. Yeah.
To comment on your the point concerning the integration, first of all, for business, so in the sense of speaking Russian or Ukrainian, not really need the education. Girls spoke Russian and Ukrainian.
No, they didn't know.
No, they did. I'm telling you.
You couldn't tell them they knew Yiddish, and they didn't. You told me. From my family, you told me what is that? My grandmother was her family to Uralsk, and Russian she knows only because they were there in Russian school. They spoke Yiddish at home, and her mother knew also Hebrew. Their language was Hebrew, Yiddish. They didn't talk with vicinity in Russian. No.
I don't know the case of your family.
This is not only the case of my family. This is
I write a dissertation on Jewish children in the Russian Empire, so I have a bit of expertise in the field.
Okay.
Where?
In the Russian Empire, where?
In the Pale of Settlement.
Where?
In the Pale of Settlement.
No, where? Pale of Settlement. This is a huge territory. Where?
Well, I'm not
in Ukraine, in Belarus, in Lithuania, in Latvia, where? In Moldova, where?
I'm not concentrating on a particular geographic region because for my research, it's not so important.
No, I would like, because the situation with Russian even after the revolution was very bad Russian. Very bad knowledge.
Traders, like women who were at this store, they had the customers come in.
They didn't knew Russian. They were laughed by Russians about the bad Russian. This was till 70s. You told me till 70s, because their language was Hebrew. They work there. If they studies, yeah. But if no, they didn't use Russian. It is completely the same in mostly in all the families, in periphery. They didn't use Russian. They knew Ukrainian. They understood Ukrainian because there was almost Russian in small towns. They understood Ukrainian, but their communication was via the children because children were open.
So can I say that it was part of research on the Russian Empire? Wouldn't agree with you.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay. The situation with knowledge of Russian among Russian Jews was very bad till 20th, 30th century. And even in periphery, where there were also the special schools on Yiddish, they didn't know good Russian. When schools were closed, this is not was good thing, but the schools were closed, the situation changed. I'm really sorry about this, but it was the situation with Yiddish and the knowledge of Russian in Ukraine and in Russian Empire. Maybe somebody wants now to show another situation. Integration was very, very bad. Not by the educated population, which was very small number of people, but among the Jews, total Jews population.
You emphasized the importance of what is called in Hebrew חברת מרבה השכלה, meaning it's not really a philanthropical organization, it's an organization of masculine with a certain theory. They put money into such projects that you're talking about.
They demand.
But there is a difference between schools to boys and girls differently, and a common one. They were the one who insisted that if you want our funding, it must be in Hebrew.
Yeah.
Because Hebrew was the language of the
This is what was here.
of the masculine in all over the 19th century Eastern Europe, which is unique because if you look at Germany, it's in German and other.
This is the same was here.
Why would they put so much money in such a little town? I'm going to add to my question. Because most of the money that חברת מרבה השכלה gave were for higher education. And this is, I think, that a misunderstanding, because in many places, people didn't go through the elementary education.
Yeah, absolutely. because
Wherever you went through the elementary education, you got two systems, to boys and to girls, as Pauline and Bendorf made up, and other stuff that both Eliana Adler and Shulamit Magnus are talking about. So I think that when you talk about education, you must see that in other places, people, both men and young women, went through another phase of education. In those places,
At that time, this
it
was
depends
when
you're talking about a small
group,
time.
for impoverished, this was a large group of
But
people.
what we know, and Ariana Adler showed it in much details, that in other places where you had 2 or 3 communities in different places, they formed a community not for the place, but for, so you have a bigger group of people donating to the and the level of education was different. It was not the same. You are trying to make general this proposition from.
I just bring one case because it's close to mine, but I looked at the other place, at the other about 15 files. 15 files.
It doesn't matter. It's
The same, there was the same, I think it was
the
another thing.
question is, because the ones that were showing the way, what you should need to study at the school at A, B, C, D is It came from there. So,
I can read you, for example, here she wrote, Cibulska wrote, in general, the program you sent for general subjects of a font suitable for our school. However, regarding the ancient Hebrew language, since this language has been secondary until now, we cannot, of course, determine to what extent we will be able to fully implement it in the public school with our local students' body.
and this is exactly what I'm talking
This
about.
is what you are talking about here.
Because the חברת מרבה השכלה had a policy and an ideology. We want to impose Hebrew. The locals didn't want it. They wanted something else.
This is why they want them to be state school. You understand? This is like transitional situation. There was a private school, then it was donation from the society, from Haskalah, and they wanted to go to state because it was another situation, and they want integration in Russian Empire. And integration in Russian Empire, this is Yiddish and Russian.
Well, I still am not sure if the reason was that you want to study Russian and Ukrainian.
No, they wanted integration.
Or you wanted somebody to fund the rest of the money if those that are funding it by now are leaving.
But in any case, why the school came? Because they need integration. It was a very difficult period. It was crisis, economical crisis. Many people, rich people, left Rzhishik or in other places. There was no donations. St. Petersburg, these people, they came from St. Petersburg. They have, and I think, it's my opinion, maybe I'm not right, my opinion, this was like a fight for the centers of the nation.
Well, I'm not sure. I don't think that if you look from a local perspective, you see the general idea.
Yeah,
So,
of course, I understand. But in any case, they came because they could not integrate. They find a very interesting place with a school for girls, which wasn't very few. There wasn't a number of such schools, and they wanted to put money there, to have influence there.